The afternoon sun in Sydney was blazing, but inside my living room, everything was about to change. I stood in front of the beige sofa where my parents were watching the news, my heart doing little gymnastics in my chest. I held up my passport and the printed e-ticket like a trophy. Mom, Dad, I'm going to Korea. My mom lowered her tea, blinking. My dad paused the TV. It wasn't a sudden impulse. I had watched K-pop Demon Hunters 3 times, enough to fall in love with the scenery. But my preparation went deeper. For nearly 3 years, I had immersed myself completely. Devouring Korean YouTube videos daily, I was obsessed with the channel Kimchitokki, and even trained my brain to think in Korean before I went to sleep. It wasn't just a trip, it was finally time to live the scenes I'd only watched on screen. I approached the dark orange taxi waiting at the Incheon airport arrival curb. My heart was pounding against my ribs. I pulled the rear door open, taking a deep breath of the crisp, cold Korean air before leaning toward the driver. 안녕하세요, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Before he could respond, I quickly held up my phone screen, displaying the address of my Hongdae Airbnb in large Hangul characters. He squinted at it, nodded, and punched it into his GPS. I slid into the back seat, closing the door behind me, and we were off. As we sped away from the airport and eventually crossed the massive bridge over the Han River, I pressed my nose against the cold window. The view was mesmerizing. It was an endless sea of glittering lights, the warm yellow glow from thousands of distant apartment windows and towering skyscrapers reflecting on the dark water below, all illuminated by the rhythmic flash of the street lamps speeding past on the bridge itself. A few minutes into the ride, the driver caught my eye in the rear-view mirror. He asked kindly,
어느 나라에서 왔어요?
호주에서 왔어요. I replied. His eyes widened in the mirror.
와, 한국어 잘하시네요.
I beamed, my cheeks feeling hot. I paused, wanting to show off the results of my hard work. 한국 유튜브 영상이랑 김치토끼 채널 보면서 매일 공부했어요.
김치토끼? 아이고, 잘하셨네.
He chuckled. I sat back against the seat, watching Seoul rush past. I had just had my first real conversation in Korean, and I hadn't messed it up. The 맨질맨질 dermatology clinic looked more like a spaceship than a doctor's office. Everything was white, marble, and terrifyingly clean. A receptionist with glowing skin smiled at me.
안녕하세요. 맨질맨질 피부과입니다. 여기 아이패드로 접수해주세요.
I stared at the screen. I could read the alphabet perfectly thanks to my years of study. 성명 meant name, I knew that, but then I hit a roadblock. 주민번호? I didn't have one of those. And what was 내 원동기? My vocabulary lessons had covered ordering food, not filling out a register at a skin clinic. Panic set in. I looked up at her with pleading eyes. 한국어 단어가 너무 어려워요. 도와주세요.
처음 오셨나요? 어떻게 오셨어요?
I froze. How did I come? 어떻게 왔냐는 게 무슨 뜻이에요? Do you mean by plane? By taxi? She laughed softly, realizing the confusion.
아, 어떤 목적으로 오셨는지 여쭙는 거예요.
My face flushed red. 연어 주사가 좋다고 들었는데 혹시 그거 할 수 있어요?
네, 할 수 있어요. 몇 회 시술하시나요?
한 번이요. Her expression turned sympathetic.
주사 바늘로 조금씩 투입하는 거라 아플 수 있어요.
Needles, my enemy. But for glass skin, I took a deep breath. 네, 그래도 해볼게요.
네, 그럼 저기 앉아서 대기해 주세요.
After 30 minutes of stinging pain that made my eyes water, she handed me a prescription.
일주일 정도는 사우나나 격한 운동은 삼가주세요.
Next stop, Hayani Dental Clinic. My tour of self-improvement continued. I walked in, feeling slightly braver than before. 안녕하세요.
안녕하세요. 하얀이 치과입니다. 첫 방문이신가요?
네.
어떤 진료 보시러 오셨나요?
I pointed to my teeth. 치아미 베기 하고 싶어서요.
보통 한 번에 이해를 하세요. 그렇게 해드릴까요?
네.
원장님께서 상한 치아는 없는지 치아 검진도 같이 해드릴 거예요.
고맙습니다. Lying in the chair with the blue light in my mouth, I imagined returning to Sydney with a smile so bright it would blind my friends. Hongdae was chaotic in the best way possible. Buskers were singing ballads, students were laughing, and the smell of fried food was everywhere. I stopped dead in my tracks. 우와! 드라마에서만 보던 떡볶이다. I walked up to the 포장마차. The steam rising from the red rice cakes was mesmerizing. 안녕하세요, 아주머니. 떡볶이 1인분 주세요. The lady smiled warmly.
아이고 예쁜데다가 한국말도 잘하네. 어느 나라에서 왔어요?
호주에서 왔어요. She ladled the red cakes onto a plate, but paused.
떡볶이 매울 수 있는데 괜찮겠어요? 이츠 스파이시.
I puffed out my chest. I was Australian. We didn't have much spice, but I was brave. 괜찮아요. 저 매운 거 잘 먹어요. I took a bite. It was sweet at first, chewy and delicious. Then, the heat hit. It wasn't just spicy, it was like eating the sun. But I kept smiling through the tears, because this was the real Korea. Back in my cozy Airbnb in Hongdae, I lay on the bed with a face mask on, one I'd bought at Olive Young earlier that day. I posted my spicy tteokbokki challenge selfie on Instagram. Ding! A DM slid in. It was from @Minjun Seoul. He had liked my last 3 photos.
Looks spicy. Are you okay?
We started talking. He wasn't creepy. He was funny. We bonded over our mutual love for vintage cameras and the fact that he thought Vegemite sounded dangerous. For 3 nights, I fell asleep clutching my phone, smiling at his texts. Then he asked the question.
Do you want to meet for coffee?
Panic set in. My mom's voice echoed in my head. Don't meet strangers from the internet. Sure, my Korean was pretty good. I could chat with taxi drivers and order complicated coffee orders. But meeting a stranger? That required a level of nuance I wasn't sure I had yet. What if I missed a red flag? Hey, Jess, think? I whispered, pacing around the room. Where is the absolute safest place in Seoul? I racked my brain, scrolling through the mental map I had built over 3 years. I needed somewhere high visibility. Suddenly, it clicked to Gwanghwamun Square. It was perfect logic. It was right in front of Gyeongbokgung, heart of the city. I remembered reading the embassies were right there, and the area was swarming with police because of all the government buildings and protests. It was the most heavily guarded, important district in Seoul. Plus, it would be packed with tourists like me. I typed back, "Sure, let's meet at Gwanghwamun Square at 2 p.m. If he tried anything funny, I'd have about 50 police officers and the spirit of Admiral Lee Sun-shin to protect me." The wind at Gwanghwamun was savage. I didn't know why. Maybe it was all the tall buildings channeling the air like a giant wind tunnel. But it cut right through my puffer coat. I stood between the golden statue of Sejongdaewang and the towering Admiral Lee Sun-shin, shivering. I checked my reflection in my phone screen. My skin was practically gleaming. All those stinging needle pricks from the salmon injections were finally paying off. I looked like a glazed donut in the best way possible. A tall figure in a beige wool coat approached me. He stopped, tilting his head slightly.
안녕하세요. 제시카 씨 맞죠?
I tucked a strand of windblown hair behind my ear and smiled shyly. 네, 안녕하세요. He blinked, looking genuinely impressed. Then a playful grin spread across his face.
우와, 한국어 발음 진짜 좋아요. 설마 한국인 아니죠?
I laughed, the tension in my chest melting away instantly. He's funny! I looked up properly then. It was him. No filters, no angles, just him. He smiled, and it was warmer than a heat lamp.
많이 춥죠? 광화문은 와봤어요?
I shook my head, mesmerized. 아니요, 아직 안 와봤었는데 꼭 와보고 싶었어요. 특히 저기 팰리스, 이름이 뭐죠? 저기 꼭 가보고 싶었어요. He followed my gaze to the majestic gates in the distance.
아, 경복궁이요? 잘 됐네요. 우리 그럼 오늘 같이 갈까요? 저도 경복궁 가는 거 좋아해요.
We walked toward the palace. He noticed me shivering and pulled a hot pack from his pocket, shaking it before handing it to me.
For your hands?
He said in English. His accent was charmingly soft. Walking through Gyeongbokgung felt like stepping into a time machine. The red and green painted eaves contrasted beautifully against the winter sky. Our conversation flowed in a comfortable rhythm, mostly in Korean, but whenever I stumbled on a difficult word, we seamlessly switched to English to bridge the gap. Somehow, the mix of languages made it feel even more intimate.
So, no demons here?
He joked, referencing movie I loved. Not today, I laughed. Just a princess and... I trailed off, blushing. He looked at me, his eyes crinkling.
And the tour guide?
That night, my suitcase lay open on the floor. My flight back to Sydney was in 2 days. I looked at the little hot pack sitting on my nightstand. It was still faintly warm. I opened the airline app on my phone. My thumb hovered over the Manage Booking button. It was crazy. It was exactly what the protagonist in a romance novel would do. Click. Change flight confirmed. New departure plus 7 days. I tossed the phone onto the bed and squealed into my pillow. Sorry, Mom and Dad. I think I need a little more time in Seoul.